Tell us a little bit about your escape from China and coming to the U.S. What was that like?
好的，实际上呢，
So actually, even before I was let out of jail, a week before I was let out of jail, the Communist Party had made my village into a prison. So when I got home, there were 70 or 80 guards around the village watching us and not letting us go anywhere. And they put up 7 high-powered lights around my home, and they had a crew of guards, revolving guards, that came to live inside our yard and in our home, and they would curse us and abuse us. They had 7 video cameras, surveillance cameras, watching us around my village, and also cell phone jammers put up so we couldn't call out or communicate with anybody. Communist Party officials took many dozens of thugs into our house to beat us, and this happened 3 times. They even threw my wife onto the ground and kicked her and beat her mercilessly. And it was after that I decided that I had to find a way to escape. And we tried many times to escape, and each time was unsuccessful until April 20th of 2012, and when at just a moment when the guards had their attention elsewhere, I made it to the stairway at the edge of our yard to a wall and went over the wall. And in this whole process of escape, I went over 8 walls and crossed over 9 rings of guards that were set up around our village. I went over fields, through a wooded area. I crossed a river until I made it to a neighboring village. And after I went over the 5th wall, I was very close to some guards, but I'd broken 3 bones in my foot. So after that, I essentially had to crawl, and it was extremely difficult. And when I got to the 7th wall, my experience had been that there wasn't a wall there, and suddenly there was a wall, and the only thing I had to do, that I was able to do, was to take it down. So I was standing on one foot. I very, very carefully took each stone down and put it very gently on the ground so that it wouldn't make any sound at all, because there was a guard close by. So when I got the wall down to about my waist level, I was able to go over and continue. And I heard a guard bring his stool out to a different place, and I realized, I'm not able to go because now he's back in my line of sight. But then a while later, the rain started again, and it covered up much of the little sounds. I heard him bring his bench back under maybe the side of a roof or something like that. And I thought, this is a sign from God, from heaven, that I can go. And so I kept going. And by the time I got to the neighboring village, because I'd had to crawl, my knees and my elbows were completely bloody, and I was soaking from the rain, and I looked horrible. In their neighboring village, there was somebody who I had once helped in the one-child policy campaign. And so I managed to find that person, and they put me in one of their little sheds. And from there, they were able to get in touch with some of my family, and later I was able to get to Beijing. Once in Beijing, we got in touch with the American Embassy. The Chinese Communist Party found out about it, and they sent 4 spy cars to follow us. And we had 2 hours of a chase in the embassy cars, being followed by these the Chinese operatives. And finally, we made it to the embassy. And following that, in the embassy, the United States government and the Chinese government engaged in a pretty intense negotiation. By the end of it, the Chinese Communist Party had no choice but to let me and my family come to this free land, to America. I am so grateful for America, for the American people, for taking us in, and I will do whatever I can to make this an even better place.
Can you tell us about the people on the posters behind you?
Gao Zhisheng, behind me is Gao Zhisheng, and he is a lawyer. And in 2005, it was about the same time that he, as when I started to get involved in human rights, that he started to speak up about injustices in society. And he was active in my case as well when I was under detention and in jail. And when there was a time when he was coming back to Shandong to speak up about my case, and he was captured and put in jail and put in prison. He was sentenced, but then put on probation, but was put in a secret detention facility. He was tortured while he was being detained, and then he was put in prison for 3 years, and he has now been disappeared for over 4 years. Nobody knows where he is. Nobody knows if he's alive or dead. Behind me on the other side is Zhang Jian, and she was also a lawyer, and she was somebody who promoted the idea of the Chinese Association of Lawyers, that the head of that organization should be elected by the other lawyers, other members, instead of being appointed by the Chinese Communist Party. And because of speaking up about the Lawyers Association, she had her legal the right to practice law revoked. As a result, she became a citizen journalist, and when the pandemic broke out in Wuhan, she traveled there to see what the situation was like under lockdown and how many people had died from the pandemic. She traveled to Wuhan from Shanghai, and another thing she was doing in Wuhan was trying to investigate the Wuhan Institute of Virology to try to understand the origins of the virus, how it had gotten out into society. And as a result, she was the Chinese Communist Party sent police to take her back to Shanghai. And she was detained on May 14th of last year. She was 去年 of last year. And since that time, she has been on a hunger strike, and she all the way till now. And she's 1.7 meters, and is now weighs about 40 kilograms. So she's lost a lot of weight, and her situation is extremely critical right now. And her family is not allowed to visit her, not allowed to see her, and reports are that her situation is very dire. She can't lift her head up by herself. Every day they're force feeding her through her nose, and her hands are tied put in handcuffs. The Chinese Communist Party will crack down severely on anybody who tries to investigate the virus and tries to tell the rest of the world about this. And I hope that people will speak out about Zhang Jian and will know more about her. And I hope that the rest of the world will insist on investigating the origins of the virus and getting to the bottom of that. And the CCP should be held responsible for their role in this.